No, you don't have to take notes.
All right.
That hot and going?
Can I ask a question about your salt baths?
Now it'll have to wait till after.
You had your fun.
Come on in, Julie.
Excuse me, everybody.
Okay, let's start out by just kind of overviewing what is the reason why the human body breaks down in all forms of disease. Okay, they're spending billions and billions of dollars every year trying to discover this, but we all know the answer. They just should come and ask one of us and we can tell them that the cause of all degenerative disease is human self-destruct. We're doing it to ourselves continually. And as we're going to talk about tonight, the key to reversing the cause and coming up with true solution has everything to do with the word habit, because what we habitually do either moves us down the scale toward disease or up the scale toward a higher quality of health. As we've talked about before, it really isn't the length of our lives that matter, but it is the quality. And so this is what we're going to talk about, is how can we improve the quality, and in the meantime, while we improve the quality of the integrity of the body, let's move it into a position that makes it impossible for degenerative disease to even develop. Now, the most powerful principle in our everyday lives, the big umbrella way up there, of course, is the principle of cause and effect, but the one that we're dealing with every single day that determines the outcome of every situation in our lives is the principle of focused attention. Now that is very, very important, because whenever you're dealing with treatment of symptoms or treatment of disease, you've got the focus of your attention working against you. Because wherever we're focusing our attention, there's one thing that we can't stop doing. And that is, we cannot, because of who we really are, we cannot stop creating the outcome of our circumstances. And so we've got to, when you're talking about creating a higher level of health, and when you're talking about a health program of any sort, number one above everything else is to decide where we're going to focus this. Are we going to focus our attention in the direction that we're afraid we might end up, or are we going to focus it where we really want to go? That is a decision that we should be dominating our days with, because it's going to make the difference as to where we end up. Beyond that first primary focus, the second focus, before we even get into physical steps of what to do to turn this all around, the second consideration is the fact that each one of us were born with the programming for our life challenge. In every cell of the body, we have the traumatic memory that inspires us to recreate the same stuff, to give us the challenges to overcome. Okay? And so as we have, if we're over 40 years of age in the room here, you can pretty well guess that you've seen all the hell that you've got inside in circumstances of life. As I tell people, life is kind of a magic trick performed with smoke and mirrors. The smoke is our intuitive guidance, and the mirrors are the people and the circumstances that reflect back to us the issues that we need to deal with in life. And that's a major reason for life. But as we work on overcoming these difficulties and the weaknesses and the problems that we carry within this programming, instead of think about the starter motor on your car. You turn the key and the starter motor brings the RPMs of your engine up to a certain speed so that it can start. Once the engine starts, it goes to a higher RPM. The starter isn't designed to go to that higher RPM. Now, if the starter stayed engaged, it would actually keep the engine from running. The same thing, if we hold on to these issues and we just keep repeating them, we're stuck. And a lot of people choose to be stuck. That's what it means to be stuck, is these lessons that are to challenge us and to strengthen us and to move us forward in life. We hold on to them so tightly and declare that this is who we are and what our life is all about. So the very second thing that we've got to do here is to conquer these issues and let them go. Forgive the past and let it go as soon as we can. If we can learn from the lesson, if we have learned from the lesson to the point where we can let it go. Anywhere that we see our daily creation of circumstances looking like yesterday and we still complain the same today as we did yesterday, there's a stuckness. So anywhere that we're stuck, those are the things that we need to get over and let go of. Okay? Then, of course, as we've talked about in some of the other classes with healing through the portals of time, until we do that actual healing of those traumatic memories that are held in the brain and the DNA of every cell of the body, until we actually do the healing of those, they are exactly like hooks on our belts holding us back. We're doing everything we can to walk forward, but those issues that are in the DNA and the memory are literally holding us back. And the way that they hold us back is this big issue that we're here to talk about tonight, and that is our self-destructive habits. Now, every one of us, as long as we're in these bodies on earth, we are self-destructive. It's the nature of the beast. But let's stop and think about how much better off we are at being 1% self-destructive instead of 100%. So it's a gradient scale. So let's start working toward the lesser end of the scale, where our habits are less destructive and we are open to enhancing our lives with changing some of those habits, the self-destructive habits. Now, as I mentioned a minute ago, the secret to our success in the area of health and improving our life in every way is our habits. And as we've heard all of our lives, you can only change one habit at a time, and two, it takes approximately 21 days to develop a habit. Or, in this case, exchange a bad habit for a good habit. Now, this is the reason why a lot of things that we try quitting in life, it doesn't work. Because it's easier to exchange a good habit for a bad habit rather than just discontinuing a habit. So with health, it makes it easy. Where there's something that we've been habitually doing that isn't so good for us, figure out, okay, if it's a coin and we flip the coin, what's on the other side? What is it that we can do to bring in a new habit? And another thing is, the reason why we all fail at the endeavors that we fail at is because we try and take on much more than we'll logically continue with. In other words, we think we get too enthusiastic about setting too large of a goal that is unrealistic for us to maintain. And the best example of this is how many people join the health clubs in January, and 2 weeks later they quit coming. I know that we've all observed that one, either personally or by observation, but things like that. And when we think about different projects that we've taken on in the past, the main reason why we've gone back to zero with these projects is because we took on more than we were really willing to commit to continuing on with. Pretty soon we get to the point where we feel like, nobody would do that consistently. That's because your comfort zone, if you move forward in any direction, your comfort zone in 1 year from now is difficult to do today. That's why the key word to all that we're going to talk about tonight is transition. A transitional dietary plan, a transitional exercise program, everything is transitional, taking it one baby step at a time. But by consistently adding one baby step to another one, it's amazing how fast we can move to light speed in following a complete program. But if we try and take on a half a dozen things and just decide I'm going to make myself do it, willpower is way overrated, as we all know. Okay? Habits is the way we live. And so it's better to just do one simple little habit or one step until it becomes a habit. And then think about, okay, I want to commit to adding another baby step. Am I willing to continue with that? And see, the secret to this idea is that if we decide that we're going to evaluate the next step first and make a commitment to it, then as we step forward very, very slowly, the key to it is never come back to zero. When we take on too big of a project, we try and do too many things at a time, guaranteed every time we come back to zero. Thank you, Josh. Much better than everybody falling on the floor passing out. What's that?
One step at a time.
One step at a time. Okay, beyond the shift in our focus. Now keep in mind, there's no power up here in the cranium. This is about like the spinner wheel on a board game. It directs the focus of our attention. Our power is within our feelings, either joy or fear. And the subject matter that we focus on activates one or the other. So even though we might not be able to change the way we feel, we can easily shift the focus of our attention, and that will change the way we feel. Okay?
There's a little chair over here, I think.
Oh, there's a...
Okay, so once we shift the focus of our thinking in the direction that we really want to go, and when we have made a habit of letting go of those things that don't serve us and don't work for us, the next thing is, okay, we're talking about the health of our body now. And so we think, okay, now, rather than going by the information that has been given to us and that we carry in our brains, what we need to do is stop for a second and think, okay, if my body were given a voice, what would it have to say? Because the body has an innate wisdom. It knows every cell, it knows everything that is going on, and it is already programmed brilliantly how to normalize its own functions, right? The music stopped long ago. You guys are going to have to sit down for a while. If your body were given a voice, what would it want for you to do? Now keep in mind that we have been trained to think that the body is a dumb piece of meat, that if you don't keep a close eye on it, it's going to break down and develop disease. But the truth of the matter is, the body is a brilliant self-regulating, self-healing mechanism, and if allowed to utilize the energy that we're busy wasting in every, well, not wasting, converting to accomplishments in whatever direction that we're looking and whatever direction that we're directing that energy, If the body had enough energy, it could heal itself of most everything, right? But we are busy spending that energy in ways that we choose and wondering why the body can't keep up with our damaging habits. If the body were supported in its own agendas, and the body does have its own agenda, and that agenda is self-healing and self-regulating, normalizing function. If we were to support the body in its agenda, there wouldn't be a problem. But we've been trained to think that we're smarter than the body and we need to fix the body. We need to treat it and take care of it. Can you imagine what an insult that is to the innate wisdom of the body? It's sitting there thinking, you're going to help me after you're the one that actually caused the damage? Because we are consciously destroying the body and unconsciously trying to correct it, and then we come along and consciously want to claim that we're going to fix it. Okay, that doesn't work. So let's look at the body from the point of view of the wisdom of the body. And what do you suppose would be the highest priority of support that the body would request of us? Okay, now we're talking about energy, the greatest expenditure of energy in the body. So it's going to want for us to do something to conserve the energy, right? So the first request is help me by enhancing the digestion of the foods that we're already eating. Okay? So with each meal, you use plant digestive enzymes to boost the digestion of the food. There's another thing that the body would like for us to consciously be aware of, and that is why we were born to grow teeth in our mouths. It's to chew our food very well, because chewing is a huge step toward digestion, and especially let's keep it in mind that we've been spoiled with cooked foods breaking down the cellulose in the food. Because if you don't break the cellulose down, you don't get the groceries inside, and our bodies don't have cellulase, the enzyme for breaking cellulose down. That's why we were given teeth. So if we don't chew the raw vegetables well enough, we don't get the groceries inside. Because even the plant, the Primagest does have cellulase in. I hate to tell you that. That's just kind of a bonus so that what gets past your teeth will be taken care of too. How's that? Okay? But enhancement of the digestion of the foods that we're already consuming is the body's number one choice, because that's going to conserve our energy. Because it's calculated that approximately 50% of our usable energy is being spent digesting a cooked meal. Now we're talking about energy conservation here. That's a huge amount of energy that is being spent on digestion alone. So if we cut that energy loss by chewing better and enhancing the digestion with plant digestive enzymes, all of a sudden the battery gets a little bit more of a charge. We're not draining the energy out. Now what I'd like to do also is to encourage everyone to think about us as adults and energy as being a currency. Because when you stop and think about it, it is the main currency that we use. We exchange our energy for our work that earns us money, and in every area of life, it's our energy that gets us what we want in life. So it is our most valuable currency that we spend to get what we want out of life. Unfortunately, the average adult is energetically bankrupt, and we don't really stop and think about that. The fact that we're depleted at the end of the day, generally. Now, if you compare our energy, again, to money, credit cards, and credit, most people don't even have credit. They can't even borrow. And that's when you're in adrenal exhaustion. The adrenal glands are what allows you to force yourself to go beyond your body's limits. You know, when we're up to the age of 30, we all know what that feels like. You can just go, 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 and lay the body in bed for one night, and it gets up and it can go and go again like crazy. But something magical happens at the age of 40. The whole body says, you ain't going to do that no more. Those days are over. That's about the time that the adrenal glands are getting so low that we just intuitively realize if we don't start moderating the expenditure, we're not going to be able to get out of bed one of these days. Okay? And that's the way we live the rest of our lives, is maintaining as much of that energy as we can, depleting it to the degree that we need, but then knowing that we have to do certain things to get that energy back up. Well, basically, there's a dead battery, and we're going from this, instead of being up here where we were at 20 years of age, we're down here with a little bit of a charge and then going to almost zero and then charging it up again. What we need to do is realize what we're doing and figure out, okay, how do we get back up here closer to where we were at 20 years of age? Good goal? Because we're talking about quality of life again. How can we have a decent quality of life with a battery that is 85% dead? Now, adrenal exhaustion is a battery that won't even take a charge anymore. And there are a lot of people that are right close to adrenal exhaustion. In fact, a guy told me down in Florida one day, he says, you know, I went to total adrenal exhaustion. And he says it's the most horrible, frustrating experience. You went there too, Linda?
Well, no, I was just wondering, you know, if you have adrenal exhaustion, does it eventually affect your thyroid, which even makes you more exhausted and
No, but
tired?
usually when the adrenal glands go down, most of the other glands are right behind them.
So they
See,
do.
it's
So
our
they're
whole
affected.
glandular system,
Yeah.
because the stress that we imposed onto the body that exhausted the adrenal glands are also affecting two things: the actual quality and function of the thyroid and the other glands, and the mineral levels and ratios in the body that determine the function of the glands. So in other words, like what you're presenting about the thyroid,
It sit on top of the thyroid, so I was just, you know, I was thinking that, because I know people have had adrenal burnout, you know, and stuff.
They both-
eventually end up having
yes, they both,
thyroid, Hashimoto, or...
thyroid and adrenal, they follow the same pattern, because it's the thyroid and the adrenal glands that determine the speed of your oxidation or the speed of your metabolism. And when you're stressing out in life, which of course adults habitually do, it causes an increase, besides exhausting the glandular system, it also increases the tissue level of magnesium and calcium, which are used as the brakes to sedate the glandular system. And so that's the reason why you notice that when the adrenal system goes down, the thyroid is real close in parallel, because they are stressed at the same time. They not only go into exhaustion together, which causes 85% of every adult to be a slow metabolizer or a slow oxidizer, but because of the mineral levels and ratios that would show up in a hair analysis, it'll show you very clearly why they're not functioning. They're not only exhausted, but they're being sedated by the high levels of magnesium and calcium that loaded up in the tissue. So there's a double reason. That's the reason why it's so difficult once a person goes down like that to come back out, because you can't stimulate your way out of an exhaustion position. You've got to nurture and support and slowly repair and rebuild. And again, the key to the reversal is the energy level. We've got to stop wasting the energy and conserve in every way that we can to get a greater charge in the battery. And then it's like the old saying, the hurrier I go, the behinder I get. Anybody ever hear that? Adrenal exhaustion and thyroid hypothyroid is exact parallel to that thought, because the more stressed out we get, the harder we drive in life. It loads the tissue with the calcium and magnesium and sedates the body, because that stressing out and going forward is an extreme example of self-destruct, and the body is geared up to pull the brakes on when it sees that we're in that mode of overdoing and stressing out. Yes.
And what part of the body chemistry protocol that we use and stuff would help your burnout of your...
A shift here is the most important, and then the gradual building of the body chemistry support system is all moving in that direction, but the one that is actually supporting the glandular system is the male and female hormone rescue, because it's not replacing your hormones, except for the DHEA. It does have DHEA in there, because that's the master hormone that starts going into a nosedive at 30 that causes all these problems. And so we do have in the women, that's the only difference between the women's formula and the men's, is the women's formula provides 25 milligrams per day, and the men has 50 milligrams of the DHEA. Otherwise, they're identical. And all it is food for your entire glandular system. Because if your adrenal glands are exhausted, all the other glands are right behind being exhausted.
How do the tonsils or lack of tonsils figure into the...
Part of the, I would say that it would just be part of the lymphatic system. They got caught working, so they tore them out. Some of the parts of our body get caught overworking, and so they cut them out so they can't tell on you anymore. What we've got to do is clean our parts and keep our parts, not have them thrown in the trash can. Okay? Okay, so let's get back to the priorities again. Energy, I think we've pretty well covered that energy is the key to it, and enhancing the digestion is the starting point for conserving energy and to develop a savings account of energy. But then there are a lot of other things, because by choice of what we're going to spend our energy on is very important. Now, you could use this thought right here as an excuse to skip exercise, but exercise is a way of generating more energy. Now, you can actually provide yourself 2 more hours in your day with a consistent exercise program. Stagnation is a horrible waste of energy. Now, you take a person that has the chronic fatigue syndrome, they can be in bed 23 hours a day, and they're still as exhausted as ever, right? Okay, so stagnation is worse than exercise. Okay, not saying that stagnation is the cause of the chronic fatigue syndrome, but it will hold a person locked into that pattern. You got to have movement of the body. And so the key to slowly moving up the scale of energy production would be a gradual increase in the exercise. And 2, we all have an intuitive knowingness of what amount of exercise our body should require, because they're finding that a lot of people over-exercise, and there's that point where it's beneficial, and then you start going over the other side, and it starts becoming destructive. So rely on your own intuitive guidance on that one, because that, again, is a transitional process where you begin slower than what feels, it's not what I can do, but what feels right in the beginning, and slowly ramp that up until you get to that point where the body feels like, okay, that's a good point right there. It's energizing, but it's not destructive. Okay? If you looked at a picture, an anatomical picture of the body, the absolute core of the intestinal tract, or of the entire body, is the intestinal tract. Okay, that is the starting point of all problems, and it's the starting point for the physical reversal of the problems. Because just like we all have a trash can in our homes, take out the trash. That's high priority. We've been brainwashed to feel that if we have a problem, we should figure out what to take for it, right? Okay, what we should be focusing on is if you have a problem, you should be thinking, how do I get rid of what's causing the problem? Because in almost every case, when we have a problem within the body, it's something that has accumulated and that we need to get rid of. It's not something that we need to take more of, but it's what we've got to get rid of. And the highest priority for elimination is to dump the body's trash can, the colon. Empty that out. Now you take kids with fevers, anybody with a fever, create diarrhea, and in no time the fever's gone. What does that prove? That the culprit was keeping the trash in the trash can too long. And the bacteria that is out of balance in the intestinal tract moved out of the intestinal tract into the body, and the wisdom of the body had to increase the temperature for one reason. Because when you increase the temperature of the body, it causes the enzymes to work faster and harder. And white blood cells are masses of enzymes. So a fever is just to speed up the activity of the white blood cells to get the bacteria back under control. But you can carry on with a fever for days as long as it's still being incubated from the trash can. So first thing, whenever anybody around you, in your family or whatever, has a fever, create diarrhea as quickly as you can. In fact, a great starting point would be to do an ascorbic acid flush. That way you get a kickstart for the immune system at the same time as creating diarrhea when you get to that saturation point. Solve the problem real quick. When my kids were growing up, no matter what caused them to say, I don't feel good, we had one medicine every day, and that was prune juice. Because I knew that either they put something in here that they shouldn't have, or something didn't come out the other end, and the prune juice solved both problems quick anyway. Okay? So that kind of proved to me that, okay, if you can keep that intestinal tract cleared and functioning and everything right here, then it doesn't develop to the next level. Now, if you don't, what will happen is you'll start overloading your filters. And the filters are the second level of the development toward the disease. And that's the kidneys and the liver. Okay, now the liver is the actual filter. We've been taught that the kidneys are organs of elimination because they eliminate a little bit of uric acid and a few things. I would rather that they stop referring to the kidneys as being organs of elimination, because they are valuable chemistry regulators. And they shouldn't be given the task of cleaning anything else out of the blood. But that's where your high blood pressures come from and everything else, is once the gallbladder is full, backs the liver up, it throws the burden of labor onto the kidneys, and the kidneys are being forced to filter unusable food residue out of the blood. And because they're loading up like they're a liver, but they don't have a gallbladder, which the gallbladder is actually just a trash can for the liver. Kidneys don't have that trash can, and so they accumulate, and pretty soon the blood that has to go through those filters can't move so freely through the filters, and so the blood pressure goes up. Okay? So what do you do to lower blood pressure? Do you take drugs to thin your blood, or drugs to poison you, in other words? Or do you do gallbladder flushes? Clean that gallbladder out so that the liver can clear itself out. You empty the liver's trash can, and of course the liver gets excited about dumping this stuff because it doesn't want to hold on to it anyway. Then the kidneys don't have to deal with it. All make sense? The body is as logical as our automobiles and other machines around us. We've got to start looking at it that way. Starting point, get the intestinal tract clearing. Second thing, as soon as you can, work toward getting that gallbladder cleared out again and again and again. Now, the reason why I say again and again and again, Ken shared with me an example. In fact, I'm going to have Ken do class in 2 weeks. He'll put a piece of it in about his own gallbladder experience. What is your age, Ken?
22.
22. And he's got photographs I got on my desk there of stuff that came out of his gallbladder that nobody should have. Those of you that have done gallbladder flushes know that there can be some pretty weird things hiding out in a gallbladder. But when you stop and think about that by the time we're 20 years of age, that gallbladder is full and it's enlarged beyond its normal size. See, our gallbladder should be about this big. And I know when I was 23 was when I did my first gallbladder flush. I know that I emptied that much out of it the first gallbladder flush. Of course, as a 20-year-old or 23, 25-year-old, there's a lot more vitality in the gallbladder in that area, so you get a really good gallbladder flush your first time. And so I know that mine was stretched about like that. Well, that's horrible to have a gallbladder stretched out with that waxy fat that didn't get eliminated properly. Okay? So anyway, that's the first goal to start working toward for each person starting out in the reversal process. Now keep in mind, what we're talking about is a principle that is just as important as changing the oil and the filter on your car every 3,000 miles. If you don't, you get a worn out engine in 30, 40,000 miles. Same thing happens to the body, but we weren't told that that is the basis of aging. That is the key to aging, is allowing that gallbladder to back the liver up and the liver no longer be able to clean the blood well enough, and so it loads the lymphatic system, which is the next level out of accumulation. And once the lymphatic system gets loaded up and accumulates with all this garbage, you start backing it into the tissue. And all disease develops in a weakened area. And so at that point, any nerve flow restriction or any immediate damage to any part of the body, creating a weak area, here the body is desperate now to try to figure out what to do with this garbage in the blood, because the brain says, I don't care what you do with that stuff, but I don't want to see it cycled back through here again. So the body starts dumping it into any weakened area in the body. And when you start loading the tissue with that garbage, this is what we refer to as congestion in the tissue. That is going to slow the blood flow, which will slow or diminish the amount of oxygen being delivered to the tissue. And that's a very natural formula for mutating cells. That's the whole basis for how we develop cancer. It's not a mystery. We need to donate a few more $1 billion to these researchers so they can figure that out, that it's a natural result of the way we're living. Yes, ma'am.
So what about like our gut, you know? I mean, doesn't that cause us problems, you know, in our bodies as far as disease and stuff, like the microbiome being compromised and stuff?
Yes. Let's go ahead and go with the next level of reversal, which is the normalization of the intestinal tract. Once we start taking the trash out, then there's other projects that we need to work on within the intestinal tract, which is up there at the higher levels of priority for the physical steps to take for normalizing the function of the body. First one, take out the trash. Second one is to rebalance the intestinal flora. Approximately 70% of our immune system is contained within the bacteria of the intestinal tract. Whether it's for us or against us, we've got to realize, okay, with chlorinated water and the exposure to antibiotics, there is our greatest undermining of the immune system. And if you ever take a look at your blood magnified at 500 to 1,000 power, you'll see how common it is for the recycling of the waste from the colon into the bloodstream. And your largest white blood cells, that's their first project that they have to tackle, because they're trying to protect the bloodstream from that recycling waste. So the neutrophils all jump on that waste material, start absorbing it, and are very quickly destroyed. The average person is wiping out their immune system 24 hours a day just because of the imbalanced intestinal flora and the fact that the white blood cells have to neutralize the waste material that the friendly bacteria isn't there to do. Now keep in mind that the colon is a trash compactor through dehydration. It's pulling the water out of the waste material, preparing it for elimination so that we don't dehydrate so quickly. You know, we're dehydrated as it is just because we don't drink enough water. But if we didn't have this recycling process to retain the water within the body, we would dehydrate so much faster. Now, a good term that you could call that liquid that is coming out of there is poop tea, right? Good name for it? Now, if you drew that out in a syringe, is there anybody in here that would allow me to squirt that in your mouth or give you an injection with it into the bloodstream? No, pretty nasty thought, right? But that's going into our bloodstream. That's going directly into our fueling system 24 hours a day. Does that emphasize a little bit more how seriously important it is to balance that intestinal flora? Because the friendly bacteria is there to neutralize the toxicity of that tea. That's the reason why humans develop certain terms like I feel crappy, I feel poopy, I feel... It's that tea that is soothing or bathing the brain 24 hours a day. And when that gets more concentrated in the blood and the liver isn't able to clean it out, we feel even worse. Does that make sense? One of the major causes for a person to feel fatigued is the recycling of this waste material, because keep in mind there's so much of the fatigue acids saturated in that liquid that when it's drawn out into the bloodstream and it goes through the brain doesn't know how to tell us that it's being poisoned. It just says, oh, I feel tired. Okay? Most of the time when we're tired, we're actually being poisoned. Make sense? Okay, so that's the reason why to normalize the intestinal tract, get that bacterial balance correct, are those high priorities. Now the very next one is almost as important, and that is to clean the blood and the lymph directly out through the skin by doing 2 detox baths a week. Okay, now by opening up the pores and pulling the acid waste, chemicals, metals, and all this garbage out through the skin, the liver sings like a bird because it doesn't have to even see that stuff again. It's gone. It's like the things you stick in the trash can and the truck comes and takes it away. You think, I'll never see that again. It's gone. That's the way the liver thinks when it sees this stuff disappear out through the skin by doing a detox bath. It's like, wow, don't have to filter that one. And the reason why the liver is so distressed about this is because think of how many times the liver has pulled the same toxic metals out of the bloodstream, dumped them in the gallbladder, into the intestinal tract, and they recycled instead of getting out the back door. That's why the liver loves detox baths, because it knows it's not going to recycle anymore. Okay? So, cleaning the blood and the lymph consistently out through the skin is another very, very important part of the process. Okay? Now, I skipped over one of the other ones. It'll be in your notes according to what I think your body would prioritize these as. All the way back 2 or 3 steps is rehydration. We talked a little bit about the water conservation program of the colon, but we need to be consciously aware of hydration. The key to hydration is a proper balance between our salt and water, because in the body, sodium chloride is what moves water. And if you don't have enough healthy salt, we've been brainwashed for years and years and years, oh, salt is horrible, get away from salt. Well, that's because the Morton Company got caught killing a lot of people with the additives and flow agents and all the garbage. But to have a good, healthy salt, like the Celtic salt, the Himalayan salt, or one of these, it will move the water through the body to keep us properly hydrated. Now, Dr. Batman-Jellig is probably the person that observed this the closest of, okay, well, how much water and how much salt do we need? And he estimated that we need approximately and that depends on the size of the body, but approximately 2 quarts of water a day and a half a teaspoon of salt per 2 quarts. Now, of course, the salt goes on the food, though, because it's a whole lot more enjoyable on the food than in the water. But that's kind of the rule of thumb balance between the salt and the water to keep the body properly hydrated. Now, of course, the body is a mass of water, salt, and minerals. So we got to make sure that we got plenty of minerals, right? And so by remineralizing the body, and the big reason why they started supplementing back in the 40s and 50s is because the trace minerals were lacking from the soil. So the trace minerals are the really, really important ones that we're not getting enough of generally. Generally, we can, if we eat enough vegetables, we can get pretty well enough of the major minerals, but the trace minerals are the guys that are missing, because even with all the farming that they've been doing for so many years, they don't put trace minerals back into the soil. And so it's good to supplement either, back years ago, there was a fantastic supplement that was very popular, just plain old kelp tablets. Because kelp tablets are loaded with trace minerals. And so, anyway, it's a good idea to make sure that we get those trace minerals, and it wouldn't hurt to load up on a few extra minerals. But that is also another reason why it's so important to have organic vegetable juices. Because with organic farming, it's not only that they're avoiding the use of pesticides, but they're also using manures and plants and things in compost to help put those minerals back into the soil. So they found that the difference between commercially produced vegetables and organic is approximately 10 times more minerals in the organic. So yes, it is worth the few pennies. We're spoiled here in Southern California because there really isn't that much difference between the cost of organics and regular. So we have no excuse to not always get organic. But the mineral content is so huge, and especially when you're juicing, because you don't have to worry about chewing it. You've hired a machine to chew it for you, so you just drink the pure minerals. That's why we eat vegetables mainly. Is besides the chlorophyll and the enzymes, the main reason is the minerals. We need more minerals. In fact, Kerry Rames was kind of the father of the whole mineral scene here decades ago. And his claim was that with every condition that we develop within the body, you can trace it back to a mineral deficiency. Now that might not be the absolute cause, because we know who the real culprits are that are causing these problems, but there will be a mineral deficiency involved very closely. So we do need to keep that in mind, that bump the mineral content, we'll be doing better. Now, as we've talked about in some of the other classes, on a daily basis, the body is breaking down and replacing approximately 500 billion cells. Now, we also hear all the time that the wisdom of the body is capable of going in and repairing all our damaged cells and weak cells and all the rest. Well, you stop and think, okay, if you evaluated the content of our blood on any given day, I don't think that you're going to find all the nutrients that those 500 billion cells need that day. There's going to be some deficiencies. So we're going to be producing some cells that don't have all the groceries, right? But the body is so brilliant that later on, when you do get those groceries, it'll go back and distribute them to all these deficient cells. How brilliant the body is. How much energy does that waste? Right? My suggestion is, let's make sure that all those nutrients are available every single day, consistently, so that when we replace those cells, we don't have a body that is wasting a certain percentage of all of our energy, robbing Peter to pay Paul, or having to go back and repair weak cells because they were produced with deficiencies. Now, every year that we properly keep the flow of detoxification open and all this garbage clearing out of the body properly and provide the nutrients and everything, guess what? The blood is cleaner and the cells get produced stronger. Next year it's getting better and better and better. Where's aging now? with a person doing those steps like that, where does aging come into this? All of a sudden, we're physically forcing a reversal, right? As Dr. Alexis Carrel proved back with his chicken heart experiment, death and disease is not in the tissue cell. It's actually in the fluids surrounding the cell. And that's what we're talking about by opening up the pathways of elimination and consistently releasing all the toxic waste and supporting the body in its abilities to totally detoxify and then provide a higher quality of nutrients consistently for the body. We're surrounding every cell in the body with nutrients and cleanliness instead of acid waste. Now keep in mind, if we're not overburdening the kidneys, making it act like a liver, it's able to keep the pH of the body balanced if we're providing all the minerals. See, that's what the kidneys should be doing every day, is throwing out all excess minerals and retaining the alkaline minerals to neutralize acidity and maintaining this balance to where the fluids throughout the body are alkaline and clean and able to support those cells to be reproduced in strength and cleanliness. Because the quality of the entire body is the result of all the trillions of cells and the quality of their lives, the quality of their environment. Okay? This is the exciting thing about the Adrenal Essentialite Complete. Finally, we've got all the nutrients that the body requires, in some cases overlapped in a few ways to make sure that all the groceries are there. And in the area where I felt like there wasn't quite enough, like vitamin D and a few things like that, I've gone ahead and boosted that up. But 3 drinks of that in a day, and you don't have to wonder what you're lacking, because either the kelp or the brewer's yeast or the moringa or one of these guys, they've got those extra groceries that you need no matter what it is. Yes.
If you aren't able to make the drinks, do you still have like your highball or anything that you can take?
Yes. Yes.
That will serve.
Yes, the Metaval is a multivitamin mineral combination that will cover those bases. I was hoping that we would have a treat for you tonight. We will have it next time. Is that okay?
Oh, you should have told us.
Well, that means you've got to come back
Oh, it's a
in 2
teaser.
weeks.
Okay.
It's a teaser. It's an ethical bribe.
Okay.
That's why we're all here.
But we actually got it. We actually got the recipe and the way to put the food bars together properly. Good, they're great. In fact, we made up a whole bunch of samples, and they disappeared so fast. It's like we had a whole big box of them. They just went almost like they ran out all by themselves.
It's delicious. Yeah, I mean,
You've tried them?
no, just the Essential Light is delicious.
Wait until you taste it in the bar form. In fact, you know, those of you that have taken a little handful of the Essential Light Complete and popped it in your mouth, it's a little tiny bit salty tasting.
I love that though.
Uh-oh, because I dropped the salt by 22%. Because I thought, you know, when you're doing a recipe, you don't want to taste any of the
That's true.
ingredients.
It's very upfront.
You want a feeling. You want
Yeah,
and
it is,
so.
it is beautiful.
And then in the bars, there was just a little bit of a salt taste. You'd love them. Now I've ruined that for you too.
No. No, I understand what you're saying. In a
Now
food
you
bar
won't-
form,
yeah.
you don't want salt like that up front.
Yeah.
But
But
regardless,
now the
it's-
flavor of it is perfect. Perfect.
I
But anyway,
believe
that
you.
way for hiking or whatever you want to do, or you know, if you only want to make 2/3 of the 3 glasses a day and drink those in the morning or something, and then you grab a bar for the 3rd meal or something, it just makes it easier. Anyway, ethical bribery. Everybody gets a little bar in 2 weeks when we have class again. Okay, that was the last essential step. Now, as I mentioned earlier, for the glandular system, we've got other solutions and everything, but what I'm trying to encourage everybody to do is just support the body in cleaning, balancing, and replacing and repairing. And if everybody could do that, you're going to win like you wouldn't believe. Then, if you want to go to the next level, instead of doing the bioidentical, instead of telling your own glands, take a hike the rest of your life, don't worry about it, I'll become dependent on these bioidenticals, I'll be fine without you, go ahead and go into a coma, glands.
Is that what those are doing, those bioidentical hormones?
Yeah, because your glands don't have to produce anything on their own, so they can just go ahead and go into a coma, and you get to do that bioidentical the rest of your life.
But what if they're not?
What if they're
What
not
if
what?
you stop? What if, your levels get low on your hormones?
Then that's the thing that we want to do. We want to wake those little suckers up and say, hey, come on, do you think you're finished? There's still life
It's not
left
a
in this
natural
body.
part of aging.
Yes, but we don't like that. Who likes to age?
I understand that.
We're going to fight it tooth and toenail. We're going to wake those little suckers up and say, hey, look, I want to stay on this planet for another 40, 50, 60 years, and that means I need for you to get back to work. Okay, but the reason why, see, remember, the reason why the glands all decided that the game was over is because we went past the 30-year mark, and nature believes that humans shouldn't be reproducing after 30. It's like, okay, on the bench with you.
Eggs are bad.
Yeah, and that's when the adrenal glands are no longer able to produce enough DHEA, and then we start becoming creative, and we start creating stress hormones that makes the DHEA even less. And there's approximately 150 absolutely essential chemistry functions that rely on the DHEA. So that's the reason why all the glands just figure, hey, game's over. We're on the bench permanently. And so we bump that level back up to a good fit 35-year-old level, 25 milligrams for women and 50 for men. And then you add the other nutrients that the glands need to become strong and healthy again. And we do the exercise, keep the body clean, do all the other things. And guess what? That is the real philosophy behind the 35 for Life program, is you develop, you turn back the odometer to a fit and healthy 35-year-old and carry that on the rest of your life. Where's aging now? Aging is a belief system. It's been imposed onto us kind of like a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? We watched everybody before us get old and die. So of course we're going to believe in that. We watch plants and animals get old and die. It's only logical. But we have a greater gift. It's called creative thought. We can alter the structure and environment because of the power that we have inside, focused by our brain. Brain doesn't have it. The brain's only a spinner wheel, remember that. But the power that we hold inside, with that focus, coupled together, we can create whatever it is that we want. Now look how brilliantly we've done it up to now. Look at all the problems that we've created for ourselves. We've proved that we can do that. Now all we got to do is direct it in the direction we want to go instead of where we're afraid we might end up. Everything is with the focus of our attention. We all complete with this thought? Can you figure out how to turn that off? Now we can try to get anything we want.